something. Yeah, I'll never do it.
I wouldn't mind doing it in Derby.
All right.
Or like, like if when you go, have you been to the Wilds?
Many years ago, but yes, you didn't.
Yes, I
yes.
don't mind that, but man, that's rough on your car.
Yeah, because John said, well, I know we didn't bring the Edge, the newer ones, because.
Now, did you guys go to the lighthouse there at Fort Clinton?
We did. We were like, Donald planned those, and it was great because we had.
You got to see a lot of different things.
Yes, we did. And I had not, and I lived here.
Yes. Because it's just right. It's a shame that you don't see this stuff right here.
Yes. But yeah, we went, he had looked up to the sunset, so that was when we were right there. And then I was even trying to ask him yesterday, I couldn't quite, I was mixing up my days.
The Hayes Presidential Palace. So that was right there too, yes. There's a couple of White Houses there. Let's see. What else did we do up there? You guys did more than we did. You must have had a lot more time.
Well, we were up there, we started in Cincinnati last Saturday, and we drove around.
Yeah.
So that, and we hit the camera, well, Mansfield, we were there a couple of days. Good morning, thank you. I'm so happy to be here. We had a couple of days because there were different things. But yeah, when we were up in the lake, it was just, what did we do? The merry-go-round?
Yeah, I saw that, yeah.
And so just, talk a couple of minutes, and then we're heading home. And you can tell that.
Oh, yeah, right.
Because you get so much into your busy days and your time, and you're trying to stay up. But yeah, we'll have to do it more.
Hey, Mr. J. Working hard?
Dwayne put me trying to put a picture up there for him.
Oh.
It's never easy.
How you doing, buddy? This is West Virginia. All right?
Yes,
Stuff right there that's very worth seeing. How you doing?
Good morning, good morning.
How you doing?
Good.
Good.
Hey, brother.
How you doing, buddy? Good. Good. Are you up this morning?
We have the mayor.
Good. How you doing?
All kinds of stuff here. Yes. Well, that cracks me up about those giraffes.
How you doing? Good to see you.
We laughed. I'm like, oh.
How are you? Good. Morning. How are you?
Ferdinand Cruz is our missionary in the Philippines. We support him, okay? He called me yesterday and said he's back in town and would like to come September the 1st.
Okay.
Give his presentation, and he preaches, does a good job. Is that all right? September 1st?
That's fine.
September 1st, okay. I just wanted to let you know that.
Good deal. Thanks, man. Appreciate it. Yeah. That sounds great. How long have you been supporting him? Yeah, that's fine. Yeah. How long we've been supporting him?
Oh, probably
Long time.
I'd say
huh?
20, over
Hey,
20
buddy.
years.
How are you? Good. Good seeing you, man.
God, huh?
Good morning. How are you? Good. How you
Good.
doing? Good seeing you.
Perfect. That's perfect, brother. Appreciate that. But yeah, and he does. I mean, he can do more with $1, but we can do with $100.
Yeah.
I mean, he really
That's
does.
right. That's great.
And
That's great.
since we've had him, he's got 3 sons or 4.
Got two.
I thought he had 3.
Brother, how you doing?
John, Mark,
Good. Good seeing you.
okay. But the boys when we first started, they were babies.
We got Mark and John.
Mark and John, and now they're a big part of the ministry with him.
That's great.
And
That's great. Man, that's wonderful to hear. I'm excited.
I'm excited for you to meet him.
Yeah, I am too.
He's a good dude.
That's great. Good deal. Where's he staying at?
He comes back and he stays in Marietta.
Oh, okay.
And
The Bible Institute.
yeah,
Oh, okay.
yeah, he stays there in Marietta. Now Sunday he'll come and I'll take him home,
That's great.
eat dinner.
Yeah.
He wants to be taken. He's gonna be here till October. He said He wants me to take him hunting.
Oh, yeah?
I gave him a bunch of deer meat last time he was in. Oh my God, he thought that was. People eat, man. They eat fish and rice for breakfast, fish and rice for lunch, and fish and rice for. I mean, it's unbelievable.
And this is in the mail. I don't know if that's something you'd be interested in. Okay, I'll read that. Okay.
But anyway,
That's great.
September 1st, which is
All right, buddy. Thank you.
I remember you talking about you clicking out, and everybody's like, stand up, Leslie.
Michael. We need to get you at one of these practices when you want to do it.
I was gonna come to church tonight.
Afterwards. Or do you want us to see if everybody can come early?
If everybody could come early, that'd be
Well, you
bad.
talk to it's most everybody in your class.
Okay.
Tracy, Josh, and Stacy. I think that's it in your class.
Okay.
We got Landon, Ryan. I think that's it.
Yeah, because I still got to go in tonight. I asked another guy to drive out.
Okay.
So I can come.
Yeah, if everybody can be here like at 5, it'd be perfect.
Okay. All right. I'll ask him.
All right.
All right, good morning. Oh, good to see each and every one of you. I'm excited to be in God's house among God's people. This is a joyous place to be. It's a fun place to be, and I enjoy being in your presence as well as God's presence. And Numbers chapter 13 and 14. The title of this lesson is Failure at the Verge of Success. Failing on the verge of success. Now, you probably know what the lesson's going to be about by that title. But this lesson is about the children of Israel's failure to claim the promised land that God had promised them. Now, as we know, the children of Israel, Jay, go ahead and put that up there on that. The children of Israel were in Egypt's bondage as slaves for 400 years. God delivered them through the 10 plagues, used Moses, his deliverer, and through the 10 plagues, they were released from their bondage. God delivered them, and they began their wilderness. They began their trip from Egypt, or exodus from Egypt to the promised land. The land that God had promised them, a land flowing with milk and honey. A land God had said gave them for an inheritance. God did all this. God told them, this land is yours. All you've got to do is claim it. And they began their journey from Egypt. And for about 45 days from Egypt, from the Red Sea crossing, they came to the wilderness, through the wilderness to the Sinai Peninsula, Mount Sinai, which is down here. Okay, it took them about 45 days. People say 3 months, but they left on the 15th of Nisan, the first month, and they were at the Mount Sinai at the beginning of the third month. So around 45 days, they were encamped at Mount Sinai. What happened there? They were there for over a year. Remember, God gave Moses the 10 Commandments on Mount Sinai. He gave them the instructions for the tabernacle. They built the tabernacle while they were there. They did all the things, all the offerings, the meat offerings, the sin offering, the peace. God instructed his people. They were his people. He was to be their God. He was letting them know. He was giving them instructions because he knew what lay before them. And they left after about a year's encampment
of Lord's instruction at Mount Sinai, they left, and in about 15 days, they came to the precipice of the land of Canaan, Kadesh Barnea, on the southern end of the land of Canaan, the promised land. Yeah, it would be. Yeah, it's right. It's right up here in the narrow part of the where the sea comes. They've got where the Red Sea, come to its narrowest point. There is where they crossed. But they spent this time, we'll say, probably 13 months from the time, 13 and a half, 14 months, from the time they left Egypt. They're now at the precipice of the land that God has promised them, a land flowing with milk and honey. God promised it to them. God said, all you got to do is claim it. I'm going to be with you. So they get there, and Moses sends out 12 spies, 12 scouts to scout out the land, one from each tribe of Israel. You'll read that and their names actually in chapter 13, first part of chapter 13. Moses instructs them to go into the land. I want you to check it out. I want you to look at the people there. I want you to look at the landscape, what it looks like. I want you to go. And they were gone for 40 days. 40 days they left. And they went and they searched out all the land of Canaan. They came back to Moses. And our lesson begins in verse 25 of chapter 13. It says, and they returned from watching, or from searching of the land after 40 days. These were the 12 scouts or spies. And they went and they came to Moses and to Aaron and to all the congregation of Israel unto the wilderness of Paran to Kadesh, and brought back word unto them and unto all the congregation, and showed them the fruit of the land. Verse 27, and they told him and said, we came unto the land whither thou sent us, and surely it floweth with milk and honey, and this is the fruit of it. Now, if we go back, we see the fruit of it. They showed a cluster of grapes cut from the vine. They said one cluster of grapes, it took 2 men to carry this cluster of grapes. Now think about that for a minute. Said there's figs, pomegranate. This truly is a land of milk and honey. Verse 28. Nevertheless, they said, "Oh my!" It's just like God said it would be. Nevertheless, that's our but. But the people be strong that dwell in the land, and the cities are walled and very great. And moreover, we saw the children of Anak there. Now, as I said, the spies are out. They've spent 40 days searching out the land. They come and they share everything with the whole congregation, everything that they had heard and seen. They gave not only the report to Moses and Aaron, but the whole congregation, all the people of Israel, and they began by showing off and displaying the fruit that they had brought from the land, telling how good it was. It was a prosperous land flowing with milk and honey, but there are giants in the land, more or less. These people that lived in Canaan were strong people. They were strong militarily. They were a very large, that were protected by very large towering walls, thick walls. The Amalekites lived in the south. The Hittites, the Jebusites, the Amorites, they looked in this land. And by the way, as they looked in this land, there wasn't not one part of this land that was unoccupied. It wasn't something they said, oh, but there is a great big old spot here. We could take up residence here. No, this whole land of Canaan was already occupied by some fierce people. And by the way, yes, they were giants. They were giants. Not giants in not giants in the feet. They were giants, big men, 9, 10-foot tall giants. And Caleb, this was the 12 spies, okay? We know the 10 of them here are giving this report. And Caleb, verse 30, and Caleb stilled the people before Moses and said, let us go up at once and possess it, for we are well able to overcome it. But the men that went with him said, we be not able to go up against the people, for they are stronger than we. And in there we saw the giants, the sons of Anak, which come of the giants, and we were in our own sight as grasshoppers, and so we were in their sight. Now, the report, as they had heard so far, were about men, these 10 scouts. The report they gave was men who were filled with fear and unbelief. Now, folks, let me tell you, unbelief is a sin that kept these people out of the promise, and is a sin that affects us so greatly today, our sin of unbelief. You could say right now and this morning that you believe, but like when it comes to stepping out on faith, something maybe you've never done, God has maybe asked you to do something that is way out of your box of safety. We go and instead of going out and doing what God will say, is God really going to be with me? Am I going to be able to do what he's called me to do? That's unbelief. This unbelief, these men were filled with fear and unbelief. And guess what that did? When this fear and unbelief, when they started spouting all this fear and unbelief out of their hearts to the people, guess what it done to the people? It filled all their hearts with fear and unbelief. But not all the spies had that gloomy report. We know that Caleb and Joshua, 2 more of the spies, and it says here Caleb stood up, and he sought with everything in him to calm the fears of the people. And when Caleb had quieted the crowd, with all the confidence in the world, he urged them that we go up at once and take the land, because guess what Caleb knew? Caleb knew that God had promised this land to Israel, and what Caleb knew, what God promises, he will deliver. It didn't matter what else was in the land. God said, it's yours, go take it. Caleb said, listen, God said it. I believe it. Let's go. Don't be afraid. Don't be. All they had to do was claim it. And man, when he got done, this wonderful speech of how what God, and listen, I'm sure he mentioned, listen, look at all these things. Don't you know, haven't you seen what God has done for us so far? What have we seen of his power and his might from the time, do you remember how he got us out of Egypt? How he's kept us through this, how he has supplied everything we've ever needed. Over 1 million people leave Egypt. 600,000 men, women, and I'm sure there's over 1 million people leaving. Can you imagine the challenge that how, folks, it was impossible without God. And I'm sure he said all that, but immediately after he got done speaking, those spies that had painted that dismal picture, they began to object to Caleb. And they said, right, matter-of-factly, without any doubt in their mind, he said, I don't care what this man says, we cannot take this land because of the people that are there. They're stronger than we are. That's exactly right. Now, they said, we as a people, we cannot take the land because the inhabitants are stronger than we are. And by the way, their assessment was very accurate. Humanly speaking, there's no way they could have went up against this people. But they failed to include God in their equation. And as we talked about and heard preached about, I believe, hey folks, listen to me. When you put God in the equation, things change. Things change real quick. You're no longer the underdog. And not only did they fail to include God in the equation, and in addition to their unbelief, these 10 spies fully provoked the doubt in all the people's minds. And listen, these scouts, these spies, they misconstrued. They messed up. They didn't understand their mission to begin with. They were not sent. Listen, they were not sent into the land to see whether or not they could or could not take the land. That issue had already been settled long ago. God said you're going to be able to take it. God said, you're going to take it, that I'm going to be with you. I'm going to run them out of there like hornets. I'm going to run them out he said, one's going to chase 1,000, 10 will chase 10,000. Hey, he already promised them all this. That issue had been settled long ago. The only question was where to begin and what strategy. But they did like we're so prone to do. They took it upon themselves to do God's job. And they failed. Folks, listen, when we do it our way instead of God's way, when we take it upon ourselves to do God's job, that's what we do sometimes, you're going to fail miserably. Sure. Exactly. Right. That's right. It's like I said, we're going to fail miserably when we start trying to do God's job. God's job to plan our life, to guide us in the way. Folks, listen to me. You step out of that, and you're going to fail miserably. Now, these two reports, the one from the 10, the other one's from Joshua, the Caleb, they were as different as night and day. There was a big difference, but that difference was one group was full of doubt, the other group was full of faith. A wise man once said, listen, never doubt in the dark what God told you in the light. Now listen to me. The spies got the facts straight. The problem was they ceased to believe in the promises that God had made them in the light when they found themselves in the dark. They focused, oh yeah, like we do. What they focused on? They focused on their problems. They focused on their problems when they needed to focus on God's promises. That fear in their heart, they forgot all about the assurance that God had gave them that they were going to possess that land. And listen to me, listen to me. Fear, that is a terrible thing. Fear will cause us to make that same mistake. God is, go ahead.
Struck the rock and the water come out. Manna come down every day. There were so many things that, God has done for them.
Listen, you can say maybe that somehow, and we can't even comprehend, but somehow they might have forgot those things. But listen to this, Steve, even greater than that. Even this minute, from the time they left that morning, they were following the power, the presence of God in a pillar of a cloud, and they led them in a pillar of fire by night. I mean, this is everywhere they went. Yes, but how could they? But how? Folks, listen, understand. We understand fear, and we think, how in the world, after seeing all this, could they do that? But listen, Satan uses that fear. That's why that is such a great fear. Fear is such a great thing for Satan to use, because what they do, it paralyzes us and it causes us to do absolutely nothing. Walk with him, seeing, yes, good point. Seeing all these things, but what happened? What happened when it started getting dark? They forgot the promise God made them in the light. They became afraid, and all of them forsook him. Not just Peter, all of them forsook him, fled. Now, look at the world, and you'll be distressed. Look at yourself, and you'll be depressed. Look to God, and you'll be at rest. You know who said that? Corrie ten Boom, a prisoner, a prisoner in the Nazi war camps, going through more hell than anybody has ever seen in these camps. Listen to me. And she said, look at the world, you'll be distressed. Folks, that's, we sit up and watch the news. Oh my gosh, you sit up and watch what's going on. Hey, listen to me. Hey, don't get me wrong. Listen to me. I feel a lot of distress. This nation we're living, it's got problems. we're, folks. And like I said, we're a stone. We're just this far away from a world war. Listen to me. You might take care of us through that world war, though. You know what I'm saying? Whatever it is. But see, we look at this world, we cause the stress. We look at ourselves. We get depressed. Look to God, and we'll be at rest through all those things. That's exactly right.
If you read that, you see where it starts. It says, we were in our own sight.
Yes, as grasshoppers, right.
And so we were in
Yes.
their sight.
Right.
If we think we are,
Right.
and they evidently
Right.
think we are. John didn't tell them they looked like grasshoppers.
No.
God didn't tell them that.
And they didn't. I mean, that was their exaggeration of the truth. They were smaller, but they wasn't as grasshoppers before these men. And listen, the difference was, and that's what Caleb said. Caleb seen the giant. As a matter of fact, if you look on over about 40 years later, as Caleb being a man of 80 some years old, he says, "Hey, you remember Moses? You remember what Moses promised me? Hey, I want this. Give me this mountain." And guess the land. Hey, what he was about to was a land of giants. Yeah, and he said, but see that attitude of faith he had? He said, the men, the walls, the city, all the circumstances. Hey, Caleb said, hey, circumstances, it don't matter. We got God. It don't matter. That's very simple. He said, it don't matter. All he said, you say all you want to, it don't matter. We got God on our side. No. And the Lord said, go and possess the land. It's yours. It's your inheritance. I gave you. Sure they did. They searched out the whole land. They seen all the great things. They seen all the things. But they also seen the bad. Oh no, I'm sure they went in secret and all this. They called spies, so no doubt. But regardless of that, all the great things they seen that God promised them, listen to me, all that went away when they seen the people, the walls, the military might. It all went away, except in the eyes of Caleb and Joshua. Now, after all God had done for them, he got them to the precipice of the land of Canaan. What he had promised what he was going to do. What he had promised their fathers from Abraham on up to right now. They're at the precipice, ready to go. God has taken care of them. All they got to do is go possess it. Look. And you could see. Chapter 14. And the Lord said unto Moses, how long will this people provoke me? How long will it be ere they believe me? Before they believe me. For all the signs, Steve, God's telling them. Like you said, how long are they going, is it going to take for them before they believe me? For all the signs which I have showed among them. They've seen all the wonders. They've seen all these miracles. And listen, after seeing all this, their attitude, God knew their heart. God said, I will smite them with a pestilence and disinherit them. And will make of thee, Moses, I will make of thee a greater nation and mightier than they. the Lord's anger burned against the nation of Israel. Did you hear me? I'm saying God was mad. His anger burned against his people. All that he had done, all that he had said, and yet they sat there and he was displeased with his people. In spite of all the signs and wonders they had seen, they had experienced at the Lord's hand, they were still fully unbelieving and rebellious against him. And the Lord made the same proposition to Moses that he made earlier when Moses was on the mount after they had went down and they had sinned, and they were, after Moses was gone, he went down to the camp of the people. Hey, God wanted to get rid of every one of them then. Danny preached on it a couple weeks ago. And what did Moses do? Moses interceded on their behalf, didn't he? Hey, don't blot their name. They're going to blot my name out. God says, listen, again, he said, I'm going to get rid of this people. I'm going to get rid of them. I'm going to destroy them, and I'm going to raise up for myself a new and greater nation from the seed of Moses. Now, what it didn't cover here, when Caleb got done, and the people listened to those of the 10, the people wept all night. They cried. They came and they got up in the morning. And listen to me. They're saying all they wanted. They get them a new leader. They said, we're going to get us a new leader, and we're going to go back to Egypt, like it was the good old days, when they were in slavery, when they were in misery. But yet they said, it's much better. Let us go, get us a leader, take us back to Egypt. I'd rather die in Egypt, or I'd wish that God would have killed me in the wilderness rather than have brought me to this place right here. And then they went in, and Caleb and Joshua starts pleading with the people, and they say, we're going to stone you. And they began to stone. They began to pick up stone. Hey, they began they were going to stone Joshua, Caleb, Moses, and Aaron, and God showed up. God showed up in the pillar. He showed up in his glory, the Bible says, where they all seen it in the tabernacle, and Moses went and talked to him. And this is what he said to him. I'm going to get rid of them, Moses. I'm going to get rid of them. I'm going to start anew with you. Now listen to Moses, reasoning with God. Verse 15. Now, if thou shalt kill all this people as one man. Now, having said this, now listen, this people, Moses, the Bible says he was the humblest man in the world, and you can see it here. I mean, these people treated Moses terrible. I mean, they treated him terribly. Here they're ready to stone him right now. But look what he said. He says, now, if thou shalt kill all this people as one man, then the nations which have heard the fame of thee will speak, saying, because the Lord was not able to bring this people into the land which he sware unto them, therefore he has slain them in the wilderness. Verse 17, he says, and now I beseech ye, let the power of my Lord be great, according as thou hast spoken, saying, the Lord is long-suffering and of great mercy, forgiving iniquity and transgression, and by no means clearing the guilty, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children unto the third and fourth generation. Now, Moses once again becomes a great intercessor for the people. Once again, he pleads the people's case before the Lord. You see, Moses, what made him such a great... Moses he had an exceptional heart for the Lord, but he also had a love and a heart for the people. And even though the people grieved, they vexed Moses, the idea to Moses that God might reject them was unthinkable to Moses. And Moses begins to tell God. He says, Lord, your own honor is at stake when it comes to dealing with these people. He said, Moses reminds God that the Egyptians, the land, that the people, that God used those 10 plagues to bring them out of Egypt with a mighty hand, that Egypt knew all that you have done for Israel. And they said, and because they know that, when they hear, this heathen nation, when they find out that the Lord God was not able to bring this people in the promised land, then God, you'll be dishonored. Your name will be a reproach to them. God tells Moses, or Moses tells God, Lord, all these heathen nations around here, they've seen how you brought this nation out of Egypt, and Egypt itself knows you brought them out with a mighty hand, and you got us this far through all these signs and wonders, but if we don't make it all the way, if we don't get in, if we don't finish this thing, they're going to say, you wasn't powerful enough, you wasn't God enough to get them into the land, promised land. But look what old Moses, what he had based his appeal on in verses 18. His appeal was upon the grace of God. Something, folks, listen to me. He's long-suffering to us. We're willing that none should perish, but all should come to repentance. Listen to him. He's long-suffering. His grace, the Lord had declared, he himself said that I am long-suffering. He is of great mercy. He forgives our sin. He forgives the sin and iniquity. But listen to me. He forgives that sin and iniquity. He forgives it. But one thing he can't do is ignore it. Like it never happened. So Moses asked the Lord to show his power, his mercy, and his grace by pardoning the people for their sin. And God does that, but not in the way Moses thought he would. Because like I said, listen to me. God's mercy, his grace, he saves he saves us from our sin and our iniquity. Listen to me. He does all this with sin, but one other thing he does with sin, and listen to me. This world is in, they think that somehow God may forget about, listen to me. God cannot forget, and he will not forget their sin. Every sin you will reap what you sow. Verse 22. He says, because all those men which have seen my glory and my miracles, all the people that have been brought out of Egypt, because all of them has seen my glory and my miracle, which I did in Egypt and in the wilderness, and have tempted me now these 10 times, and have not hearkened unto my voice. Surely they shall not see the land which I swear unto their fathers, neither shall any of them that provoke me see it. Now God says, he tells Moses, okay, I'm going to pardon them. I'm going to pardon Israel. Just as you asked me to, Moses. I'm going to pardon the nation of Israel. But those folks that have rebelled against me and have those folks that have that unbelieving heart right now after all they've seen, they're not going to get away with it. In spite of this rebellious generation, God was determined to fulfill his promise to Israel. The people would be spared as a nation, but those that walked in unbelief would be judged. And it mentions here that the Israelites had tested the Lord 10 times. Well, if you go down through there, hey, it was actually more than that. I think 10 times was, God just put that out, 10 is a number of completeness. But over and over again, they pushed God to the limit. They refused to hear his voice. And he said, because this unbelieving generation would never see the land of promise. Only those that believed the Lord would enter Canaan. And of these 600,000 men that left Egypt, that was over 20 years old, listen to me, only Joshua and Caleb, God says, only those two will see this land. Because they believed, they walked by faith, and he said because of that, Caleb, he and his seed was going to possess the land. Now, they were camped out. They were camped out right on the edge of Canaan land. And when God pronounced this judgment upon Israel, all those people of unbelief, all those people that once stood, all of a sudden when they found out, listen, God just said we ain't going to see the promised land. They said, they changed their mind then. They said, oh, no. So they got up in the morning and they got up and they told Moses, they said, yeah, we're going to go take the land down. Moses said, oh, no, you're not. He said, you go if you want to, but the Spirit, the Ark of the Covenant, God's presence, it's standing right here in the camp. And where he's at, listen to me, if you try to go without him, you'll be in trouble. But they said, oh no, we're going to claim the land. We're going to take the land. And listen, they went out, the children of Israel, a lot of them went out against the Amalekites. And guess what happened to them? They got absolutely massacred. God said, verse 29, your carcass shall fall in this wilderness, and all that were numbered of you according to your whole number from 20 years old and upward, which have murmured against me. God said, I put up with this murmuring people long enough. Judgment is now going to fall on these unbelievers. There would be no mercy for them. Every soldier in the census of Israel, every person over 20 years old and upward would perish. They would never enter the land of Canaan, except with, I said, Joshua and Caleb, because they believed and they tried to get the other people to believe and persuade them. Doubtless, verse 30, ye shall not come into the land concerning which I swear to make you dwell therein, save Caleb and the son of Jephunneh and Joshua the son of Nun. But your little ones, which ye said should be a prey, them will I bring in, and they shall know the land which ye have despised. Now, even in his wrath, even in his judgment, even in his anger, even though all this was kindled, even in his wrath, the Lord remembered mercy. He didn't immediately slay every one of them. What he did was he showed them mercy. by them wandering in the wilderness for 40 years until they perished. You say, well, what kind of mercy is that? Well, if you'd have struck them all dead and done right then when they did it, they'd all be in hell without knowing anything about. So listen, what this 40 years in the world, even though it was hardship for everyone, it was also very merciful. Every year that passed by, they had that opportunity to genuinely repent and trust the Lord in all the days that they had left. But here, the children, all those that were under 20 years old, they had to suffer in the wilderness just like the parents did. The sin of their parents. They had to endure that. But at least they wasn't orphans. Now after the number of days which ye have searched out the land, even 40, verse 34, even 40 days, each day for a year ye shall bear your iniquities, even 40 years ye shall know my breach of promise. And the men which Moses sent to search the land, who returned and made all the congregation to murmur against them by bringing up a slander upon the land, even those men that did bring the evil report upon the land died by the plague before the Lord. But Joshua the son of Nun and Caleb the son of Jephunneh, which were of the men that went to search the land, still live still. Now, the number of years that God said you're going to wander in the wilderness was the same number of days that they had to search out the land. 40 days, he said, you search out. For 40 years, you're going to be spent wandering in the wilderness, a year for each day. Now, here we are. And for 40 years, here they are. For 40 years, they wandered in the wilderness until each one of those people that was over 20 years old and older had died. Now I said there were 600,000. I said there were 600,000 men that left Egypt's Exodus, left Egypt's bondage. There was at least these over 600,000 men, plus the women, over that many people, probably 1 million people, they were going to die. They were going to die in the wilderness without seeing the land of promise. Now I want you to think about that. Do the math. Oh, if you do the math, to bury that many people in 40 years of wandering, to bury that many people, it dealt with over 50 funerals a day. Now, but not all of them perished over the 40 years. There were 10 of them, those spies that led the people away. God pronounced judgment on them, and they died immediately with the plague, it says. And that's what happened. 40 years, they wandered in the wilderness. And guess what God did for them there? God took care of them. God took care of them. Bible tells their sandals, the feet, their shoes never wore out. The clothes on their backs never wore out. They had all the food and water they needed. God took care of them 40 years till all that generation fell in the wilderness. Why? Because of their unbelief, their fear, and their unbelief. Listen to me, folks. Listen. What was their consequence? By the way, as I said, don't ever forget this. If you forget anything else I say, because the world seems to forget about this. There is a consequence. There is something you will have to pay for your sin. There is a consequence for every sin. God's judgment is certain on every sin. You say it might not happen today. That consequence, but be sure your sin will find you out. We will reap what we sow. And when you look at our nation today, if that is true, and we know it is, that's going to cause a little bit of distress. It should.